my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to another indie book review. And I'm not gonna lie, this one is not the kind I like to review a lot, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So today I'm reviewing Gypsies, Tramps, and Weeia, I believe, is a made-up word as far as I can tell, and like most fantasy made-up words, pronunciation is always tricky. But hello, Editing Margaret here. Just realized that I never actually said the author's name. The book is by Elle Boca. And now back to previous Margaret. But this is about a woman named Danielle who is sent to Paris as a marshal, and her job is basically to make sure that these supernatural people called the Weeia, who have a variety of powers, but they don't seem like overtly powerful. I think in one case, one dude's power is like he has super special taste buds. But her job is to make sure that basically they don't bother humans and humans don't bother them, more or less. And the idea was really intriguing, and the entire thing is of course set in Paris, which I believe the author has been to, and it comes across in well, we'll get to that. Anyway, right off the bat, there were a bit of struggles with show not tell, in that what the reader is told is not what the reader is shown. Danielle is supposed to be this outcast that no one likes. The problem is that while the narrative tells you that, every bit of time between the beginning of the book and when she leaves for Paris is basically filled with her interacting with people that like her. From members of the staff at the school that she trains at that are like her secret allies, to friends and possible love interests. It seems like everyone she interacts with at the beginning is on her side. There's not one face-to-face interaction with someone that dislikes her. So while the narrative tells you that she's an outcast, you never see it. And I kind of had an issue with that, because it's like I can't sympathize with someone being an outcast when all I see is her friends and allies. So then she leaves for Paris, and right away the next writing quirk is what the author chooses to focus on. She mentions, the protagonist, that she was raised by an aunt and uncle because her parents had died apparently in some infamous way. One of those, like, it tarnished the family name forever and everyone looks down on her for it. And I don't think you're supposed to know much about it in this one. The problem is that you get next to nothing with the family that raised her regardless. It's like, oh, she's gonna go visit home before she leaves for Paris. The entire overview gets like 2 sentences. Now normally that wouldn't be a problem if there's just nothing to delve into there, although I mean, if you wanted to emphasize the family downfall, showing her interacting with the fallen family would probably be a good way to go about it, but fine. If you don't think that's important to the story, I get it. The problem is that during the scene on the plane, there's this totally inane scene that is drawn out for no particular reason, in which her seatbelt doesn't work. And they can't get it to work, and the flight attendant is annoyed, and eventually they have to get an entirely new seatbelt. So much is focused on this airplane seatbelt not working that I genuinely thought it was going to be some big plot point. Like, oh, her enemies have somehow found a way to try to endanger her life, and the plane's going to go down or something, because so much emphasis was put on this seatbelt. Like 10 times more than what her family got as a reference in the story. But no, nothing happens. My guess, if I had to hazard a guess, is that something similar to this happened to the author and she wanted to put it in the story, but it's so boring as an idea. Like, you've set me up with magical people in a hidden society and her new placement being this weird, like, mystical thing, and the previous people filling this assignment have died mysteriously. I don't care about a seatbelt on an airplane. So it was very strange to me. And that happens a lot. She'll make a new friend in Paris and go to visit their house, right? Couple sentences just saying she went and she had a good time. And then the next scene, we'll get like a blow by blow of this servant setting out each little thing of a tea set. It was like the human parts were skipped over and the more mundane parts were focused on. And it didn't make any sense other than these were things that the author has seen and wanted to input. I believe I read somewhere, and I cannot remember where now, that the author has traveled to France, so it might be like inserting real life information, but you can't do it at the expense of characters. And you can see a lot of the love for the country kind of coming through. The problem is that it comes through by way of gigantic info dumps. For example, when she first arrives, there's one unnamed woman who basically only exists to give giant info dumps about the city and this opera house, which used to be the main opera house, but now it's not, and now it's this opera house, and it's like, none of this is important to the story at all. And that happens a lot. They'll give up all of these street names. I mean, she meant to take this street name, but actually, it makes no sense because it's not really important to the story, and info dumps that large dribble right out of the reader's brain again. I could not tell you next to anything that I learned there because I moved on and it wasn't pertinent to the story, so it didn't really stick around. Now, once the story took off proper, again, certain things were rushed that in another story would have been focused on and other things to focus on. Like, she bags this gigantic criminal that starts like making her to realize, wow, she's good at her job. That's over really quick. But discovering why this one company's bread tastes bad now takes pages and pages. It's so strange that the book has this really intriguing premise set up, but somehow manages to skip or rush through the really exciting human thrilling parts and focus on mundane ones. It almost felt like the author had set up this supernatural thriller, but low-key just wanted to write a contemporary. And if you want to write a contemporary, that's fine. But I came in this wanting intrigue. However, the biggest struggle that I had, and this almost made it a 1-star. I had to really stop and think if I was going to give this book a 1-star, because I have never given an indie book that I have reviewed for my channel a 1-star before, and this got close. And that is the racial stereotyping of the Romani people. When I first read the title, I thought it was just a reference to the song Gypsies, Tramps, and Thieves, which is a song that's been around for decades. One of those, if you're a music nerd, you know it. You probably don't if you haven't been paying attention to like music from the 70s. I thought it was just a reference that I didn't get because for the longest time there were no Romani people. Now, I know that the debate between is that word a slur or not is up in the air, and I'm obviously not of that demographic, so me saying yes it is or no it's not is not going to matter, but I'm going to just start referring to them as Romani just to be safe, because the book also refers to them as Romani as well as Gypsies and Tramps. So the Romani people here are unanimously the villains. There is not a single Romani character in this story that has a personality more than clever criminal. They are all of the pickpockets, they are all of the thieves, they are all the ones doing the criminal activities, and not a single one of them has the dignity of a name or any kind of nuanced personality. And then when I remembered that this is taking place in Paris, so we're focusing on Romani people in Paris, suddenly when every character started talking about the Gypsies, I heard their dialogue in Judge Claude Frollo's voice, which is not a good sign. I should not be thinking of a Disney villain when the protagonist I'm supposed to be cheering for is talking about this people group. And I kept waiting for something, anything, them to realize that, hey, maybe let's not demonize this entire group of people and label them all as criminals. But no, it never happened. And it angered me. And this book was released in 2016. We know, we know by now that kind of thing isn't okay. And legitimately thought about dropping it to a 1-star on that alone. And part of me even sitting here still thinks that I should, because there's no way that's okay. And there's no way, how do you as the author in the 21st century not get what you're doing when you do this? Like, I'm dead serious. If a gypsy, a Romani person, was in the story, they were only referred to as a gypsy or a woman. No names. Not one. I'm getting myself all angry again thinking about this, but yeah, would not suggest for that purpose alone. And really, the only reason that this even snaked into a 2-star was that the ideas in it were cool in theory. The idea of making the setting such a big idea was cool, and would have been cool if it had been integrated more seamlessly as opposed to giant info dumps and focusing all the more mundane things. There were characters that, while at the beginning seemed like caricatures of people who were just there to impede the protagonist, became more nuanced and more in-depth. And that would have been cool if, again, they had had any real emphasis in the story. It wasn't until near the end. In general, there was a lot of fun ideas. There was a very forced romantic attraction moment, but that I did not fall for a second. But also by that point in the book, they already started bringing out the Romani people as villains, so like I was already pulling back a lot. There were cool ideas, and I've seen this in a lot of indie books, in that the ideas are good, but ideas can be destroyed by poor writing habits. And in this case, I struggle to even talk about this book in my usual softening or sugarcoating it style that I usually do for these reviews, because I can't get over it. I can't get over the demonizing an entire group of people in a city that has a long and tragic history of demonizing a group of people who has already been in modern pop culture for wrongly demonizing this group of people. I don't care if you haven't watched the movie or read the book, you should know the basic premise of Hunchback of Notre Dame. That was a pretty big story, and it's all about how Paris and French people wrongly demonize Romani people. But I'm getting close to a rant, so I'm going to cut it off there. Now, this one did skate into a 2-star very narrowly. I mostly gave it that because, again, the good ideas, but also because having never given a book that I have reviewed in a video a 1-star, I feel like that is something that I really need to wait for the absolute worst, which I probably will never happen, because if I hate a book that much, I don't finish it. I don't finish books that I literally are at a 1-star halfway through. But I likely will not be reading anything else from this author. And I'm going to be real careful about books involving other people groups written by white people for a while, because now I'm just a little gun shy. I don't think it's to the extent that I am with straight women writing gay erotica yet, but we might get there eventually. Anyway, if you would like a review, hopefully not like this one, I will have my review policy and email down in the description below. I will warn you that I am currently soft closed, meaning that it is much more likely that I will say no right now than usual. But if you are an author of diverse background, such as someone who is from a group of color, neurodiverse, or queer, please send me those links anyway. I will check them out. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.